All right, so Claude Opus 5 just hit number 1 out of 190 models on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, scoring 61 against a median of 32. ChatGPT 5.6 Luna is right there trying to take that spot, so let's actually figure out which one you should be using. These two are competing right now for your API budget and your workflow, so timing matters. I'm running Claude Opus 5 versus ChatGPT 5.6 Luna through 4 real tests: reasoning, cost, context, and instruction following, and every claim traces to a name source, no vendor spin. Now, one of these models has published pricing, verified benchmarks, and a confirmed context window. And the other one you'd basically be buying on community vibes. Which one that is and whether it actually matters for your budget, that's what we're getting into. This comparison is for anyone running multi-step workflows, processing long documents, or paying real API costs every month. Because pick the wrong model and you're either overpaying for capability you don't need, or you're hitting context limits mid-task and restarting from scratch. And both of those hurt. The goal is a clean decision rule, not a hype piece. Test 1, multi-step reasoning, and here's the failure mode you actually feel in production. You give a model a 5-step task, it nails steps 1 through 3, then drifts on step 4 and produces something plausible looking but wrong, and you don't catch it until it's already shipped, which is a real cost, not just a benchmark problem. So I looked at the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, and Opus 5 scores 61 out of 190 models, ranked number 1 with the median sitting at 32, and on RKGI3, it's hitting 3 times the next best model per vendor docs. What genuinely surprised me is there's no published Luna figure for any of these benchmarks. So on screen, you'll see Luna's side is just blank. Take this with a grain of salt, because the honest caveat is that Luna's data just doesn't exist yet in any verified form. So Opus 5 has receipts and Luna showed up with nothing, and that asymmetry is itself the finding, which is worth sitting with before we call a winner. Opus 5 takes test 1. I was expecting at least some community benchmark for Luna to push back with, and there's just nothing published, so Opus 5 wins by default on documented evidence, which is kind of its own statement. Score is Claude Opus 5.1, ChatGPT 5.6 Luna 0. Test 2, cost versus quality ratio. And the failure mode here is you don't know what you're paying until the invoice hits. You're literally hammering a model through thousands of calls, and then the bill comes back and you have no idea if you got the quality that justified it. And with no published pricing on one side, that's the actual situation right now. Here's what we got from the verified pricing data. Opus 5 runs $5 per million input tokens, $25 per million output tokens, press verified via fineouts, and batch API drops that to $250 and $1250. Artificial Analysis rates it as expensive relative to peers at 2.9 times the market median on input, and Luna has 0 published pricing, full stop. Opus 5 is 2.9 times the median input price, which is real money at scale, but the counter argument from vendor data is that it matches Fable 5's quality on Cursor Bench at roughly half the per task cost. So the unit economics can still work out. The problem is you can't run that math at all for Luna right now. Opus 5 takes test 2 as well. Honestly, I was expecting some leaked pricing for Luna floating around, but nothing's verified anywhere. So Opus 5 wins the cost quality dimension purely because it has actual numbers you can plan around. Score is now Claude Opus 5.2, ChatGPT 5.6 Luna 0, test 3 context window and long document handling. And the failure mode is you're halfway through processing a big code base or a stack of research papers. The model hits its limit and you have to chunk it up and lose the coherence that made the task worth doing in the first place, which is hours of rework you didn't budget for. Opus 5 has a confirmed 1 million token context window, vendor verified and independently confirmed by Artificial Analysis, which works out to roughly 1,500 A4 pages in a single session. And cache reads drop to 50 cents per million tokens, a 90% discount off standard input. Luna's context window, no published figure exists. And I looked. Immunity block data on Opus 5 fitting a full mid-sized code base in one session is directional. So treat that part loosely. And it's also worth noting that a huge context window only helps if you can afford to fill it repeatedly. The 90% cache discount makes that more realistic, but it's still not free at scale. Opus 5 picks up test 3. I was expecting Luna to have at least a rough context figure from OpenAI's docs, and there's just nothing there. So Opus 5 wins on the simple fact that it has a confirmed economical 1 million token window, and Luna doesn't have a published number at all. That's Claude Opus 5.3, ChatGPT 5.6 Luna 0, test 4 creative writing and instruction adherence. And the failure mode is you write a detailed system prompt, the model follows rules 1 through 6, then ignores rule 7 because it decided something else made more sense. And now you're debugging prompts instead of building things. With every extra instruction you add, just piling on tokens and cost. What I found from press reported data on Anthropic's Claude Code rollout is that they removed over 80% of the defensive system prompt rules for Opus 5 models and measured 0 quality loss on coding evaluations. And Opus 5 self-verifies by default, so adding explicit double-check instructions actually wastes tokens without improving results. For Luna, There's no published adherence evaluation anywhere. The honest caveat is that the 80% rule reduction data comes from Anthropic's own Claude code deployment. So it's vendor adjacent, not a fully independent study. And instruction adherence is kind of a feel thing in practice anyway, because real users report that neither model reliably follows a 10-step chain without drifting at some point. Opus 5 takes test 4. I honestly expected some community eval on Luna's instruction following, given how much people talk about it. But nothing's published, so Opus 5 wins on documented native precision, and that 80% prompt reduction with zero quality loss is a pretty concrete proof point. Final score, Claude Opus 5.4, ChatGPT 5.6 Luna 0. So here's where Opus 5 clearly pulls ahead. It's number 1 on a 119 model intelligence index with a score of 61. API pricing is confirmed at $5 per million input tokens at roughly half the per task cost of Fable 5 at near parity quality. Context window is a verified 1 million tokens with cache reads at 90% off, and it shed 80% of its system prompt rules with zero quality loss. Luna isn't without its case though. Community reports consistently say it feels faster on straightforward, low complexity tasks, and if you're already deep in the OpenAI ecosystem, the toolchain integration is genuinely smoother. And if Luna's pricing ends up below Opus 5's $5 per million tokens when it finally publishes, high volume, simple workloads could flip pretty quickly in Luna's favor. Okay, so I was expecting a real fight here, and what I got was one model with receipts and one without. So the decision rule is pretty clear. If you need verified reasoning performance, predictable API costs, and a confirmed million token context window, today you go with Claude Opus 5. And the only honest case for holding off is if you're already in the OpenAI ecosystem and you can wait for Luna's benchmarks to actually drop before committing budget.